Hey, so you live in Indiana and you want to have an even better life with your dog, right? Well, you've come to the right place. We're going to walk through exactly how to find a great trainer, someone who can help both of you confidently get out there and enjoy everything the Hoosier State has to offer.
All right, just for a second, I want you to picture this. What does a perfect day with your dog look like here in Indiana? Is it, a calm walk through downtown Indy where your dog is just totally ignoring all those distractions? Or maybe it's playing fetch in the yard and you're not worried because there's no fence, or hiking a gorgeous state park trail with your dog walking right by your side on the leash. Whatever that vision is, that's our starting point. That's where good training really begins.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about your dog and your goals. Then, we'll explore the training options out there. After that, we'll get into how to actually choose a trainer. And finally, we'll talk about training right here in our community.
All right, first up, your dog, your goals. See, the absolute best training plan, it always starts with really understanding your own dog and figuring out what you actually want to accomplish together. So if you're in a city like Indy or Fort Wayne, your world is just full of close encounters, right? The big goal here is usually having a dog who can stay cool, calm, and collected on a busy sidewalk, think Mass Ave, and also behave nicely when you want to pop into a local pet-friendly business.
Okay, but what if you're in the suburbs? Well, the challenges are a little different. You're probably more focused on things like safety in an unfenced yard, which means you need a rock-solid recall. And you also want to make sure your dog has calm, predictable manners with all the neighborhood kids and families buzzing around.
And then, of course, for all you rural dog owners, the training needs are totally unique. We're talking about teaching your dog to respect livestock boundaries, how to ignore all that tempting wildlife like deer, and just generally understanding where the property lines are.
So which one of these sounds like you? Are you starting fresh with a new puppy, focusing on socialization, potty training, all that good stuff? Or do you just need some basic obedience? Sit, stay, walking nicely on a leash for everyday life? Or maybe you're dealing with something a little more complex, like fear or reactivity, that needs what we call behavior modification. Just figuring out which bucket you fall into is a huge first step. Okay, let's move on to exploring your training options. Now that you've got your goals in mind, we can start looking at all the different methods and formats that are out there. So one of the main ideas you're going to hear a lot about is positive reinforcement. And really, all it is a way of training that rewards your dog for making good choices. It's all about building trust, and it gets you these lasting results without having to use fear or pain. You end up with a dog that wants to work with you, not one that's afraid of messing up.
Now, you're usually going to see two main options: group classes and private lessons. Group classes, they're awesome for practicing focus when there are other dogs and people around. Plus, they're typically more affordable. Private lessons, though, are completely customized to your goals and your schedule. They're perfect if you're dealing with specific behavior issues or fear, because the work happens right where the problems actually occur.
And hey, there are other formats out there too. You've got in-home training where the expert literally comes to your house. Then there's board and train, which is kind of like a boot camp for your dog. Day training is another one. They get trained while you're at work. And you can even do video calls now for training help from a distance. Okay, let's talk money, because that's always a factor. This table gives you a rough idea of the average costs here in Indiana for 2025. As you can see, group classes are usually the most affordable way to start. Something like a board and train program, on the other hand, is a much bigger investment. And just a heads up, if you're in a metro area like Indy, you can probably expect the prices to be on the higher end of these ranges.
All right, that brings us to the big one: how to choose a trainer. You know what you want to achieve, you've seen the options, so how do you actually pick the right person for you and your dog?
So here's something you really need to know. Indiana does not require dog trainers to be licensed. That's a big deal. It means that looking for professional credentials is a really smart way to go. These certifications show that a trainer has actually put in the work. They've invested in their education, they've passed exams, and they're committed to a certain professional standard.
So when you're talking to a potential trainer, you want to have a few questions ready to go. First, ask about their training methods and philosophy. Ask about their credentials and what they do for continuing education. Talk about how they're going to customize the training specifically for your dog. And of course, get all the costs figured out up front, including any travel fees. Here's a pro tip. Ask if you can watch a class or a session before you commit. That'll tell you a lot.
Most expert trainers will offer a free consultation or some kind of evaluation, and you should 100% take them up on that. Remember, this isn't just about them checking out your dog, it's your chance to check them out. Watch how they interact with you. See how they interact with your dog. You're looking for a partner here, someone you and your dog both feel good about.
Okay,
For our last section, let's bring this all home. Let's talk about training in your community. What are the specific rules and resources you need to know about right here in Indiana?
All right, just a few key Indiana things to keep in your back pocket. First, the rabies vaccination. It's required by state law for any dog over 3 months old. Leash laws? Yep, most cities and towns have them, so it's always a good idea to know your local rules. Also, things like excessive barking can sometimes be covered by local noise ordinances. And like we said before, trainers aren't state licensed, which just means you got to do your homework when choosing one.
So once you get going with training, you're going to need places to practice, right? The fenced-in dog parks, like at Eagle Creek or Broad Ripple Park in Indy, are awesome for safely working on stuff like recall. And you can't beat the leash trails at so many of our great Indiana state parks for practicing those polite walking skills with new sights and smells all around.
Look, at the end of the day, all of this is about building confidence. Not just for your dog, but for you too. Because when you have a well-trained dog, you get to say yes to so much more. Yes to bringing them over to a friend's house. Yes to a relaxing walk through the neighborhood. And yes to just including them in more parts of your life. We really hope you find the perfect training partner, and we wish you all the best on your journey together.